Sarah Martinez walked into the crowded coffee shop near the military base, her heart racing with nervous excitement. She had driven 3 hours to meet her boyfriend Jake for the first time since he returned from deployment. The small cafe buzzed with conversation as families and couples reunited after months apart. She chose a corner table and rolled up the sleeves of her cardigan slightly, revealing the edge of an intricate tattoo that wound around her forearm. The design was beautiful and meaningful. A compass rose intertwined with anchor chains and the words "Forever Faithful," scripted in elegant lettering. She had gotten it 6 months ago while Jake was overseas, wanting something permanent to represent their love and her unwavering support for his military service. As Sarah waited, she noticed a group of women at a nearby table stealing glances at her and whispering among themselves. They appeared to be military wives, their conversation peppered with talk of base housing and deployment schedules. Their eyes kept drifting to her tattoo, and their expressions grew increasingly judgmental. "Look at that girl over there," one woman said loud enough for Sarah to hear, her voice dripping with disdain, covered in tattoos like some kind of rebel. "What kind of military girlfriend does that to herself?" Another woman joined in, shaking her head disapprovingly. "Probably some young thing who thinks dating a soldier makes her special. She has no idea what real sacrifice looks like." The tattoo screams desperation for attention. Sarah felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. She had worked as a nurse for 3 years, had volunteered at veteran support groups, and had waited faithfully through Jake's deployment while pursuing her master's degree. The tattoo meant everything to her. It represented her commitment, her love, and her respect for the military community she hoped to fully join someday. The women continued their cruel commentary, their voices carrying across the small space. "Military men deserve better than girls who mark themselves up like that. It's disrespectful to the uniform and everything it stands for." Sarah's hands trembled as she gripped her coffee cup. She had expected judgment from some people about her tattoo, but not from other military families. These were supposed to be her people, the community she had grown to love and respect through Jake's service. Their words cut deeper than she had anticipated. She glanced at her phone, hoping Jake would arrive soon to rescue her from this uncomfortable situation. The tattoo that had brought her so much pride and comfort during lonely nights now felt like a scarlet letter marking her as an outsider in the very community where she most wanted to belong. The cafe door chimed as more people entered, bringing with them the sounds of the busy street outside. Sarah tried to focus on the book she had brought, but the women's continued whispers made concentration impossible. She began to question her decision to get the tattoo, wondering if she had somehow disrespected the military traditions she had tried so hard to honor. Minutes felt like hours as Sarah sat there, enduring the judgmental stares and hushed comments. She had never felt more alone or unwelcome, despite being surrounded by people who should have understood her devotion to military life. The beautiful artwork on her arm, which told the story of her love and commitment, had become a source of shame and isolation. Little did she know that her greatest moment of vindication was about to walk through that cafe door, changing everything she thought she knew about judgment, respect, and the true meaning of service. The cafe door opened again, and Sarah looked up hopefully, expecting to see Jake's familiar face. Instead, a distinguished older man in military uniform entered, his presence immediately commanding attention. His uniform was crisp and decorated with numerous ribbons and insignia that spoke of years of dedicated service. Even Sarah, with her limited military knowledge, could tell this was someone of significant rank and importance. The man scanned the room briefly before approaching the counter to place his order. As he waited, his eyes swept across the cafe, taking in the various conversations and gatherings. His gaze was alert and observant, the kind that came from years of military training and leadership responsibilities. The group of women who had been mocking Sarah suddenly straightened in their seats, recognizing the authority the man represented. Their whispered criticisms died down as they became aware that someone of obvious importance was now sharing their space. They exchanged nervous glances, perhaps wondering if their earlier behavior had been overheard. Sarah tried to make herself smaller in her corner, pulling her sleeves down to cover more of her tattoo. The last thing she wanted was for another military person to judge her, based on the artwork that had already caused her so much grief. She felt vulnerable and exposed, caught between her desire to show pride in her tattoo's meaning and her growing fear of continued rejection. The commander received his coffee and began looking for a place to sit. The cafe had filled up considerably since Sarah's arrival, and most tables were occupied by reunion groups and families. His eyes continued to survey the room, assessing his options with the same methodical approach he likely used in his professional duties. Meanwhile, Jake finally appeared in the doorway, his face lighting up when he spotted Sarah in her corner. He was tall and lean, with the confident bearing that came from military training, but his expression was warm and excited as he made his way through the crowded cafe. He had been looking forward to this reunion for weeks, counting down the days until he could hold Sarah in his arms again. As Jake approached Sarah's table, she stood quickly to embrace him, momentarily forgetting about her earlier embarrassment. Their reunion was tender and emotional, filled with the relief and joy that came after months of separation. Jake held her tightly, whispering how much he had missed her and how beautiful she looked. "I can't believe you're really here," Sarah whispered against his ear, feeling some of her earlier tension melt away in his arms. "I've missed you so much." Jake pulled back slightly to look at her face, his hands gently framing her cheeks. "You look amazing, Sarah. I love what you've done with your hair." And his eyes traveled down to her arms. "I can't wait to see the tattoo you told me about in your letters." Sarah's smile faltered slightly as she remembered the harsh words from the women nearby. "Maybe we should find somewhere else to sit," she suggested quietly, glancing nervously toward the group that had been criticizing her. "It's getting pretty crowded in here." But Jake was already helping her back into her seat, genuinely excited to spend time with her in this cozy setting. "This is perfect," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "I've been dreaming about having coffee with you somewhere normal like this. Show me the tattoo, Sarah. I want to see what you did." Reluctantly, Sarah rolled up her sleeve, revealing the intricate design that had caused her so much trouble. Jake's eyes widened with genuine appreciation and emotion as he took in every detail of the compass rose, anchor chains and scripted words that declared her faithfulness. The commander, still standing with his coffee, happened to notice the exchange between the young couple. His experienced eyes caught sight of the tattoo as Sarah revealed it to Jake, and something in his expression shifted dramatically. The commander's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips as his trained eyes focused intently on Sarah's tattoo. What he saw there made his breath catch in his throat. The design was not just beautiful artwork. It was a precise replica of a memorial tattoo he had seen only once before, in the most heartbreaking circumstances imaginable. 3 years earlier, the commander had attended a military funeral that would haunt him forever. Marine Sergeant David Martinez had been killed in action overseas, leaving behind a young sister who had spoken at his service. The commander remembered her clearly now, a nursing student named Sarah who had stood at the podium with tears streaming down her face, speaking about her brother's dedication to his fellow Marines and his country. Sarah had talked about David's compass tattoo, the one he had gotten before his final deployment. She described how he told her it would always guide him home to his family, no matter where his service took him. The compass rose with anchor chains had been David's way of staying connected to everything he held dear while serving far from home. Now, seeing that exact design recreated on Sarah's arm with such loving detail, the commander understood the profound meaning behind her choice. This was not some frivolous decoration or attention-seeking statement. This was a memorial, a way for a grieving sister to carry her fallen brother's memory with her always. The commander remembered more details from that funeral. Sarah had mentioned becoming involved with veteran support groups, dedicating herself to helping military families cope with loss and deployment stress. She had spoken about wanting to honor her brother's memory by supporting the military community that had meant everything to him. Jake was examining the tattoo with wonder and respect, running his finger gently along the detailed artwork. "Sarah, this is incredible," he said softly. "The detail is amazing, and the meaning. I can see why this was so important to you. Your brother would be proud." The women at the nearby table were still watching, their earlier mockery replaced by curiosity about Jake's obvious appreciation for the tattoo they had criticized so harshly. They whispered among themselves, clearly confused about why this soldier seemed so moved by what they considered inappropriate body art. "That's David's compass design," Sarah explained to Jake, her voice thick with emotion. "I wanted something that would keep him close to me, especially when you were deployed. When I felt scared or lonely, I could look at it and remember his courage. The commander felt his heart clench as he overheard her words. He remembered Sergeant Martinez as the exceptional Marine, brave and dedicated, with an infectious laugh and unwavering loyalty to his unit. The young man had died saving the lives of 3 fellow Marines, throwing himself on a grenade without hesitation. Setting down his coffee cup with deliberate care, the commander began walking across the cafe toward Sarah and Jake's table. His movement was purposeful and dignified, drawing the attention of everyone in the immediate area. The room seemed to sense that something significant was about to happen. Jake noticed the approaching officer first, immediately recognizing the rank insignia and sitting straighter in his chair. Military protocol kicked in automatically, even in the civilian setting. Sarah followed his gaze, her stomach dropping as she saw the stern-faced commander heading directly toward their table. "Oh no," she whispered to Jake, instinctively pulling her sleeve back down to cover the tattoo. "He's going to say something about it too. I should have listened to you about getting something smaller and more hidden." But Jake was studying the commander's face carefully, noting something in the older man's expression that didn't match Sarah's fears. There was no anger or disapproval there. Instead, the commander's eyes held a mixture of recognition, respect, and deep emotion that Jake couldn't quite understand. The cafe grew quieter as the commander stopped directly beside their table, his presence commanding the attention of everyone nearby. Sarah felt her heart pounding, preparing herself for another lecture about appropriate behavior for military girlfriends. What happened next would shock everyone in that coffee shop and change Sarah's understanding of her place in the military community forever. The commander stood at attention beside their table, his posture ramrod straight and his expression solemn with profound respect. Without saying a word, he slowly raised his right hand to his forehead in a perfect military salute, holding the position with unwavering precision. The entire cafe fell silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups were set down without sound, and every eye in the room focused on the extraordinary scene unfolding before them. The commander's salute was not casual or brief. It was the kind of formal, respectful salute reserved for the most significant occasions, held with the gravity befitting a fallen hero. Sarah stared in complete shock, her mouth slightly open as she tried to process what was happening. Jake immediately rose to his feet and returned the salute crisply, understanding that something momentous was occurring even if he didn't know the full details. The weight of military tradition and honor filled the space around their table. "Miss Martinez," the commander said finally, his voice carrying clearly through the silent cafe, "I had the honor of attending your brother Sergeant David Martinez's funeral 3 years ago. I remember your beautiful eulogy, and I remember you describing his compass tattoo and what it meant to him." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as the commander continued to hold his salute. She had never expected anyone to remember her or David's story, especially not someone of such obvious rank and importance. The realization that this distinguished officer was honoring her brother's memory through her tattoo left her speechless with emotion. "Your brother died saving 3 Marines. Under my command," the commander continued, his voice steady but filled with feeling. "His sacrifice and courage were extraordinary. He was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross for his heroic actions that day." The women who had been mocking Sarah earlier sat frozen in their chairs, their faces pale with the dawning understanding of their terrible mistake. They had ridiculed a Gold Star sister, someone who had lost a family member in service to their country. Their earlier words of judgment and criticism now seemed not just cruel, but deeply shameful. Jake felt tears pricking his own eyes as he understood the full significance of Sarah's tattoo and the commander's unprecedented show of respect. He had known about David's death, of course, but seeing this high-ranking officer pay tribute to Sarah's memorial tattoo made the sacrifice feel more real and immediate than ever before. "When I saw his compass design, recreated on your arm," the commander said, finally lowering his salute, "I knew immediately who you were and what it represented. That tattoo is not just body art, it's a memorial to one of the finest Marines I ever had the privilege to know." Sarah found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Thank you, sir.
David would be..."
He would be so honored to know you remember him." The commander's expression softened slightly, revealing the compassionate leader beneath the formal military bearing. "Miss Martinez, Your brother's memory lives on in every Marine he saved that day, in their families and in their future service. But it also lives on in you, and in the way you've chosen to honor his sacrifice." He gestured toward her tattoo with deep respect. "That compass rose represents more than just your brother's memory. It represents the values he died defending: courage, honor, sacrifice, and love of country. You wear those values on your skin with pride, and everyone in this room should feel privileged to see such a meaningful tribute." The silence in the cafe was profound, broken only by the soft sounds of people wiping away tears and shifting in their seats with new understanding. The commander's words had transformed the atmosphere completely, replacing judgment and criticism with respect and humility. One of the women who had been mocking Sarah earlier stood up slowly from her table, her face flushed with shame and regret. She approached their table hesitantly, her earlier confidence replaced by genuine remorse and the weight of her terrible mistake. The woman who approached their table was visibly shaking, her earlier arrogance completely gone. Her name was Carol, and she was the wife of a staff sergeant stationed at the base. She had spent the last few minutes sitting in stunned silence, realizing the magnitude of her cruel words about a Gold Star family member. "Miss Martinez," Carol began, her voice trembling with emotion and shame, "I owe you the most sincere apology of my life. My friends and we said terrible things about your tattoo, without knowing anything about you or what it meant. We judged you based on our own ignorance and prejudice." Sarah looked up at her, seeing genuine remorse in the woman's eyes. The hurt from earlier was still fresh, but Sarah could see that Carol was truly horrified by her own behavior. The other women from the group had also risen from their table, standing behind Carol with their heads bowed in shame. "We had no right to mock something so sacred and meaningful," Carol continued, tears streaming down her face. "Your brother died serving our country, and here you are honoring his memory in the most beautiful way possible, and we were cruel and judgmental. I am so very sorry." The commander watched this exchange with approval, seeing an opportunity for education and healing within the military community. This was exactly the kind of misunderstanding that could be prevented with better awareness and compassion among military families. "Mrs. Henderson," the commander addressed Carol, clearly knowing her and her husband, "this is indeed a learning moment for all of us. Miss Martinez's tattoo represents the finest traditions of military service: sacrifice, honor, and remembrance. Perhaps this experience will help you and others think more carefully before passing judgment on what we don't fully understand." Sarah felt Jake's hand squeeze hers supportively, as she found the strength to respond to Carol's apology. Despite the pain these women had caused her, she recognized the courage it took for Carol to admit her mistake publicly and ask for forgiveness. "I accept your apology," Sarah said softly, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. "I understand that tattoos can be misunderstood, especially in military communities where tradition and appearance standards are important. But this tattoo, it's my way of keeping David close to me and honoring his sacrifice every single day." She rolled up her sleeve fully, revealing the entire design to everyone in the cafe who was now watching with rapt attention and respect. The compass rose was David's symbol. He said it would always guide him home to family, no matter where his service took him. The anchor chains represent his unshakable commitment to his fellow Marines and his country. The commander nodded approvingly at Sarah's explanation. Sergeant Martinez embodied everything this tattoo represents. He was steady like a compass, anchored in his values, and always guided by his love for his fellow service members and his family. Carol wiped her tears and looked directly at the intricate artwork with new eyes. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "And now that I understand its meaning, I can see the love and respect that went into every detail. Your brother would be proud to know how thoughtfully you've honored him." The other women from Carol's group approached slowly, each offering their own apologies with genuine remorse. They spoke about their own fears and insecurities as military spouses, how sometimes judgment of others became a way to deal with their own uncertainties about fitting into military culture. Jake stood and extended his hand to the commander, introducing himself properly. "Sir, I'm Private Jake Thompson. Thank you for honoring Sarah and her brother's memory. It means more than you could know." The commander shook Jake's hand firmly. "Private Thompson, you're dating a remarkable young woman. Miss Martinez has been volunteering with veteran support groups and helping military families for years. She understands service and sacrifice better than many people who've never faced such loss. As the conversation continued, other people in the cafe began to approach their table. Elderly veterans came forward to shake Sarah's hand and share their own stories of loss and remembrance. Young military families apologized for their earlier stares and expressed admiration for Sarah's dedication to honoring her brother's memory. What had started as Sarah's worst nightmare had transformed into one of the most meaningful experiences of her life. The cafe, which had felt hostile and unwelcoming just an hour earlier, now buzzed with warmth and genuine connection. People were sharing stories, offering support, and creating the kind of military community bond that Sarah had always hoped to be part of. The commander spent another 20 minutes with Sarah and Jake, sharing memories of Sergeant Martinez that Sarah had never heard before. He told her about David's sense of humor, his dedication to his fellow Marines, and the way he always volunteered for the most dangerous assignments to keep others safe. These stories painted a picture of her brother's military service that filled gaps in her understanding and brought her both tears and comfort. "Your brother talked about you constantly," the commander revealed. "He was so proud of your nursing career and your volunteer work with veteran families. He said you were the strongest person he knew, and that your support gave him strength during difficult times overseas." Sarah felt a profound sense of closure hearing these words. For 3 years, she had wondered if David truly understood how much she supported his choice to serve, how proud she was of his dedication. Now she knew that her love and encouragement had reached him even across the distance of deployment. Carol and her friends had taken seats at a nearby table, becoming part of the extended conversation about military families, sacrifice, and support. They shared their own stories of deployment stress, the challenges of military life, and their growing understanding of how quick judgment could damage the very community bonds they all needed. "I've learned something important today," Carol said, addressing the group. "We're all part of this military family, whether we're active duty, spouses, siblings, or partners. We should be lifting each other up, not tearing each other down based on appearances or assumptions." Jake watched Sarah throughout these conversations, seeing her transform from the nervous, hurt young woman he'd found earlier to someone confident and respected within this military community. Her tattoo, which had been a source of shame and judgment hours before, was now being admired and understood as the beautiful memorial it truly was. An elderly veteran approached their table, moving slowly with the aid of a walker. His chest was decorated with pins and patches indicating his service in Vietnam. He stopped beside Sarah's chair and looked down at her tattoo with deep respect. "Young lady," he said in a gravelly voice, "I've seen a lot of ways people honor fallen heroes over the years. Your tattoo is one of the most beautiful tributes I've ever witnessed. Your brother's memory lives on through your love and dedication." As the afternoon wore on, Sarah realized that this experience had given her something she hadn't expected, a true sense of belonging in the military community. The initial judgment and criticism had been painful, but the response from the commander and the subsequent education of the other families had created genuine connections and understanding. The commander finally prepared to leave, but not before giving Sarah his business card and making a request. "Miss Martinez, I'd like to invite you to speak at our next Gold Star family event on base. Your story, your tattoo, and your volunteer work represent exactly the kind of family support and remembrance we want to honor and share with others." Sarah accepted the card with gratitude, feeling a sense of purpose and validation she had never experienced before. As the commander left the cafe, he paused at the door and turned back to offer one final salute to Sarah, a gesture that brought tears to the eyes of everyone watching. As Jake and Sarah finally sat alone together, she looked down at her tattoo with new appreciation. What had started as a personal memorial had become a bridge to understanding, education, and community within the military family she had always wanted to join. "I'm so proud of you," Jake said, taking her hand across the table, "and I'm proud to be with someone who honors service and sacrifice the way you do." David would be amazed to see how his memory helped bring all these people together today. Sarah smiled, feeling at peace for the first time since getting her tattoo. She had faced judgment and criticism, but she had also discovered the true strength of military community when understanding replaced prejudice. Her brother's compass had guided her home after all, not to a place but to a family of people who understood the real meaning of service, sacrifice, and love.